So whenever you're ready.
Okay. My name is Shalene Valenzuela. I came to Missoula 3.5 years ago and started as an artist in residence at the Clay Studio of Missoula. And this is the piece that I'll be talking about today. It's called So Very Happy. It's the fifth in a series of sewing machines that I've made. I've been playing a lot more with the trompe-l'oeil aspects of things, and trompe-l'oeil sort of translates to fooling the eye. I consider my work like it's a bit of trompe-l'oeil with a twist, because I am working with these objects that I want them to sort of, you go, wow, like that looks like a sewing machine, or that looks like a purse, or something like that. But when you come closer, you realize there's something a little different about it. And what's kind of funny sometimes is people actually going, well, oh yeah, she's the lady who paints on sewing machines, and, or, oh, I see you make purses, or something like that, and then they don't actually realize that it's clay, which is kind of funny to me. You know, I want my objects to sort of reference those objects, but you know, I want it to look like a sewing machine. You kind of approach it like that, but then something's not quite right about it because of the fact that, you know, sewing machines don't traditionally have these illustrations and whatnot on them. Everything is clay on here except for this little doodad that sticks up top and the needle right there. But everything else is ceramic. Ceramic slip casting involves like a liquefied body of clay that you have to pour in some sort of mold. And plaster has this great quality of being able to absorb moisture out of clay. If you make a plaster mold of something, you have to make sure you make enough parts that you can get that original object out. And then the mold always has to have an area where you're able to pour the slip in. So the bottom I kept open so that you're able to pour this ceramic slip in. And it's sort of, you pour it in, you let it set up for a while. The slip will set up and it'll start sort of like those chocolate hollow bunnies you get during Easter. It's sort of the same concept where it's just a shell that forms. Basically this mold is full of the slip. You pour out the slip after it gets this certain thickness to it that you want. So generally, depending on the size of the object, between like 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch. Eventually what happens is, since plaster absorbs moisture out of clay, the object itself starts to slightly shrink in the mold. And so it pulls away from the walls, and then you're able to just pop it out. And it ends up being this sort of self-supported object. I also like working with objects that you can sort of approach them from various sides. So I also find the back as well, just, you know, to be just as important as the front of an object. There's so much potential there. The way I put my illustrations onto things, I want to lead the eye around so that you can follow that front and back. When you compose things and sort of think about, well, how do I get the viewer to want to walk around? Like, you sort of like leave this little trail of breadcrumbs, because we're all curious at like what's going on the other side of something. I also tend to use a lot of objects that relate to domesticity. But I work with these sort of coveted items just because they're familiar and comforting in some way, and we relate to them. We're able to see them and recognize them. I always drew when I was little. My mother took art classes at the community college, and she, you know, and then from that day forward, I sort of had this like little role model right there to like, you know, like, oh, my mom's doing this. And when I was young, I often enjoyed like sort of sifting through old photos of family members especially the female family members, and then my mother would keep all her stacks of yearbooks and stuff like that in the house. So I'd sort of like look through these things constantly as a child and sort of like saw this as this idealized time. And if you think of advertising and that era of like mid 20th century was this like ideal time where all of a sudden the like advertising world boomed and everything was ideal and perfect and shiny, but there were so many issues and problems, and the advertising world just has a great way of just making things so shiny and approachable. And so I like to play with a little bit of that because I like to have my things sort of use the bright colors and use these pretty little images to sort of bring you in, and then like sort of reveal a like darker side of things as well.
What can you tell me about Stay Lovely?
Stay lovely?
Mm-hmm.
It's a positive affirmation. We're always given pep talks and encouraged to be a certain way. And it's sort of like, when you're in elementary school and you get the little stickers and gold stars and like, you did a great job or something like that. In a sense, stay lovely is not so much a positive affirmation as it is more of a command and like what our notions are in order to like how we stay lovely. As I mentioned before, a lot of the images and whatnot I work with deal with like a lot of range of feminine issues and how as a woman you grow up in modern day society and sort of you feel, as a kid growing up, there's a lot of like questioning and self-doubt that I had, as well as countless many other friends and people have about themselves.